Hey everyone, how you doing? This is John Wild from Orange Kettlebell Club. Going to do a little equipment review today on the Kettlebell Kings competition kettlebell. All right, let's go over some specs on the bells, okay? We have an 8 kilogram bell and a 32 kilo bell here, and you can see that they are pretty much identical except for the color and a little bit of wear and tear, right? Both of these bells and all the Kettlebell Kings competition bells are 35 millimeters in circumference on the handle, okay? They're also 6 centimeters tall in the window and 12 centimeters wide in the window. Now this is really important because during your training, you're going to train with 8s, you're going to train with 16s, you're going to train with 24s, you're going to train with 32s, probably, hopefully, right? And you're not going to want to alter your mechanics as you're changing weight, okay? Even if you're just going from the 8s to the 16s, or if you're going from the 24s to the 32s, or anywhere in between, when you're inserting those hands into the bell, right, you want these mechanics to be consistent. That's what you're practicing, okay? So if the size of the bell changes every time you change weight, you're gonna have to alter your mechanics, and that's really not gonna work when you get to a higher level with competition. The other thing that's uniform on these bells is the size of the globe. You can see that they're the same. These are just 2 bells that we grabbed off the rack, okay? There's really nothing unique about these 2 bells from the others on the rack behind me, which you can't see because it's like down yonder, right? But one thing you can see for sure is that they're both pretty worn. I mean, you know, they've had some miles put on them for sure. Lots of reps in the gym. And they're both still in excellent condition. The paint, you know, it wears. That's just how it works. You know, you're smashing steel against each other rep after rep, and you know, the paint's gonna come off. I would say that the paint on these bells is excellent. You know, I've had bells where the paint rubs off on my forearms because the top just isn't so good with the paint. Sometimes, you know, they crash together and you just have paint chips all over the floor. That's not really a problem with these bells in my experience. The paint is flat and smooth, and I like it a lot. You know, I don't think it adds anything to the weight. Doesn't seem like it's any kind of super heavy paint, so that's good. These bells are gravity cast, okay? The way that bells used to be made was there was one mold, okay? And it was this one, the 8 kilo, or the 12 kilo. And what they would do is they would fill up the empty bell with all different kinds of weights in order to turn this bell into a 32 kilo bell. And we used to have a joke. It's like a, you know, we would tell it all the time, but we sorry, forgive me, apologies. But we don't tell that joke about these bells. We don't tell it because there are no fillers in these bells. You know, they're cast, gravity cast, they're one-piece bells. You can see on the bottom, there's a hole in the bucket, right? And when you use a bell like this that's made out of one piece, right? The way that it's cast, the weight is a little bit higher towards the top. The heavier the bell gets, it gets weighted right around the handle, right? And everything else is hollow, so there's no rattle, right? There's no filler, certainly not like what we used to joke about, right? But what this does is this creates an incredibly balanced bell, right? And when you clean the bell into the rack, you'll actually feel it rock into your rack position because the weight is at the top of the bell. If the weight's at the bottom of the bell, it rolls out, right? You can feel it. When you lock out overhead and you insert, you'll feel the bell set as opposed to a bottom weighted bell, which will either twist you or roll out, right? Depending on your momentum and your insertion angle. So when these came along, these were definitely the best bells that I had ever used, if for no other reason, because of that. Okay. There's no welding on these bells. You're not going to find the seams under the handles and along the side here in the horns that you would with other kettlebells over time, meaning over the history of the sport. When kettlebells first started showing up, there was a lot of seam tearing, you know, and you'd have to get your file out and you'd have to file it. Sometimes you'd have to hit it with an angle grinder, you know, and I'm not even one of those guys who likes his bells smooth, you know. I don't really, I prefer kind of like a little rough roughness to the handles and everything. But you know, when you bleed, that doesn't work so well. And these are just totally smooth because of the gravity casting and the one-piece structure. It's actually really amazing. You know, speaking of older bells, one of the biggest things about Kettlebell Kings is the free delivery. My first set of bells cost me almost $1,000 in shipping, and it took about 6 months. Kettlebell King shipping is free to the lower 48, and it takes 3 to 5 business days, and these guys are just money when it comes to that. You know, I'm not trying to put down the way it used to be. You know, when you're an old timer like I am, you think about the dark ages quite fondly. You know, I had never been more excited to get anything in my life than that first set of bells. You know, and I respect the guys who went out of their way to try to get the sport going. You know, it's a difficult thing to figure out. I respect the hell out of the Kettlebell Kings for figuring out how to do it with such efficiency. They've really made a huge difference in the sport, certainly when it comes to equipment. Another way that these guys have made a big difference in the sport is the way that they support different organizations and different clubs and different lifters. Working with the Kettlebell Kings for the past couple of years, they've become a sponsor of the Orange Kettlebell Club. We use their kettlebells at every meet that we have, every competition that we run. All the equipment is Kettlebell Kings. All the handles are regulated. Everything is exactly the same. And this is a fairly new thing. You know, it wasn't like this even a few years ago. We were still calling people up, asking them to bring their bells to meet so that we could have equipment to run these events. And when the Kettlebell Kings showed up, they started working with all the leaders in the sport to really try to regulate the equipment, and that elevated the entire sport. And it's a really big deal. It's a really big deal, and we're lucky because, to me, you know, that's the kind of thing that earns support and respect. And we're super lucky that the bells are as good as they are, because they really are the best game around. All right, so there we go. That's your basic review of the Kettlebell Kings competition kettlebell, and I just want to say that 2 thumbs up for sure. And we love using these bells at the competition. We've had 0 complaints after all the competitions and the thousands of lifters that we've had use these bells. 0 complaints about the bells. Kettlebell Kings support our competitions. They sponsor our competitions. They sponsor the athletes that lift at the competitions. It's a really big deal in the sport, and I'm super psyched. You know, they keep innovating. They keep coming out with more equipment, and when they do, and when you hear about it, you can tune in here, and we'll have a little review on it for you. You can check out Kettlebell Kings at, wait for it, kettlebellkings.com. I'm John Wild from Orange Kettlebell Club and orangekettlebellclub.com, and thanks for watching. All right, see you on the platform.